And with that, we are live. It is your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning, a little NBA strategy show here. I'm joined by Greg Ehrenberg. I had the week off, or at least last Saturday morning off, because I'm getting ready to move to Florida. So today, if I panned the camera around, you would see it's empty outside of a bunch of boxes here that I'm finally consolidating everything into. And Greg, I'm hitting the road Thursday morning. No more Virginia for me. I will be in sunny Florida by Thursday night.
I'm jealous, especially when here it is 40 degrees. There's flood warnings today. My power might go out later. It is pouring rain. So, yeah, UMAC going to be in a nice sunny Florida. And then also, I don't know if this has occurred to you, but because you were away last week and I had a couple of weeks that I was away before that, just in the morning, we haven't done this strategy show together in about a month now.
It's been a while. Yeah, I got a couple with Belman in there, as did you.
Yep.
So we should say this is the first one Belman's not doing in a month. But anyway, we've got a fun game here. Last night we saw March Madness NBA style. We had some late starting lineup adjustments with Wiseman getting the tab in Detroit. We saw Goodwin getting the start and Scottie Pippen Jr. coming off the bench in Memphis. And there were a couple other shakeups. It looks like a lot of teams, and we'll go through them. While there aren't that many back-to-back, we still have a lot of teams resting. At this point, we need a different term, like asset management, right? For like the Lauri Markkanens of the world. It's not a back-to-back, but he's being rested. So it's like, okay, well, I get not wanting to have him get hurt or taking it easy and have these guys just play twice a week. But we need something else other than these injury things, because it's just a charade at this point, Greg.
Yeah, we've got lots of injury stuff. And then also there's a lot of teams, too, that are just simply not fucking around. They're not willing to take any chances. So yesterday, where people like, hey, how come Duren wasn't on the injury report? I don't know this for sure. Maybe there's information that we could look up on it, but who's really covering the Pistons all that closely at this point in time? Here's what I'm fairly confident happened, though. Duren was probably feeling fine earlier in the day, was warming up for the game, and then as he's warming up, his back's felt a little bit stiff. He probably said something to the training staff, and then they just stepped in and go like, hey, this game doesn't mean anything to us. Don't play today. Doesn't matter. This has no impact on anything. Right? The game, whether we win, we lose, doesn't matter to the team. Give you the night off. The only bad thing that could happen here is if you do anything that would potentially cause a long-term injury. So I assume in warm-ups, his back stiffened up, and that was why right before the game started, they're like, hey, we're just going to start Wiseman instead. So where people go like, hey, how come they didn't put it on the injury report? I don't think it was known about until right before. And maybe, first week of the season, or maybe not first week, because then there's a whole season to look ahead to. So teams might be more cautious there. But middle of the season, if the Pistons were still in the mix, I have a feeling Duren probably would have played. But just considering the circumstance, a couple weeks left in the season where they're at in the standings, they're like, hey, not going to start him today. And yeah, a lot of that stuff is going to happen in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and then you mentioned, well, who's covering the Pistons? Who cares about the Pistons? I was going to say Rod Beard, friend, one of the original beat writers who became friendly with the DFS world, but he got promoted. He is the sports editor at the Detroit Press now. So he's not even really paying attention. So if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? In any event, what will make a sound is the jingling in your pocket if you sign up for Sleeper. I am going to drop the promo code into the YouTube chat for you guys, because if you come in through our promo code, you get up to a $500 deposit match on your first deposit. That is a pretty good deal. I will also drop our landing page with all of the information on Sleeper in there as well, because oftentimes people have some questions about what is this? Well, this is a sort of a prop pick'em site. You can build up to 7 and 8 leg cards here. Up to a 100x payout is where they cap it for you. They have a dynamic props, meaning that they will put double doubles and triple doubles on there, and it's not a binary yes or no, you win or lose. They'll put a multiplier on it, so you can also push some of their numbers up or down, lowering or increasing your multiplier. And of course, the more legs you have on this, the better off the payout. They also are oftentimes doing free or reduced lines. You usually get 3 or 4 of those a week if you're a regular member there. And then when you sign up, almost always they have, in this case, the NBA, it'll pop up on your app when you sign up. It'll be, some player will be a half a point to score. Last night it was LeBron. I didn't see who it was this morning, but it does pop up on your app.
Yeah.
So
Jason Tatum this morning, if you guys
Jason
sign up,
Tatum.
which actually I just got an alert from the partnership team here. But yep, so we've got Saturday, the free square over on Sleeper, Jason Tatum over 0.5 points. If you sign up, you get access to that as well.
Yep, but it's pretty nifty. And then see, I'll hold up my app here. But if there's a good one, it'll pop up here and it'll say it'll be in green or orange or another color, and it'll just tell you, hey, for a limited time, you can put $10 on so and so for this wager. So it's very easy to use, and the search feature is important because you can also go over to OddsShopper and easily review all of the things for Sleeper, as well as all the other sports books and stuff. So key things there. All right, Greg, let's get down to business here because it is basketball season. It is March Madness, both for college and for the NBA. We are not covering the final game of the night. Both sites have left that off. It is the Denver and Portland game, but everybody's going with the 6-game compressed slate. We have a game starting at 7, one at 7:30, and then 4 at 8 o'clock. Our first game tonight is the Sacramento Kings at the Orlando Magic. Let's see here. I believe both teams are on island games here. Sacramento has been on a road trip. This is a 3-4 for them, but they did not play last night. They last played Thursday. They don't play again until Monday. We know Trey Lyles is out for at least another week with the knee issue, and then Kevin Huerter likely out through the end of the season. Maybe he comes back for the playoffs. It might not even be the first round. He has a back issue. On the other side, the only one popping up on the injury report for Orlando is Harris, Gary Harris. He's dealing with a sore foot. This is an island game as well for Orlando. They last played Thursday. They don't play again until Wednesday. So each of the teams has kind of gotten a pretty significant break over the last 10 days where they get 3 or 4 days off on each game, basically playing 3 games in a 8-day or 7-day period. So key for them. What do you like for this one? The Kings coming in as 3.5-point road dogs here, Greg. 216 over under. The floor is yours, good sir.
Yeah, very little to like in this one, in my opinion. You guys can see the exposure that I have on my initial sim on screen here. And not a single player from the Sacramento Kings landed in more than 10% of lineups. And this doesn't look like something that's going to change later on the day either, because like you pointed out, Emac, we've already got Kevin Huerter out, Trey Lyles out, but he's been out. We've got Sasha Vezenkov, who's listed as questionable. He's not going to change anything if he gets ruled out. And we're at a point in the season where a lot of players get ruled out. It creates a whole bunch of value. So assuming there's going to be a lot of value in other spots, there doesn't really seem to be any kind of prospects for more value to open up in Sacramento. And it's a difficult matchup. It's a down pace spot against the Orlando Magic. The Magic are currently, let's see, so the Orlando Magic are 26th in adjusted pace this year. So massive down pace matchup for the Sacramento Kings. The price tags are also up. Malik Monk has gotten to be more expensive. Same with Sabonis and Fox. Fox got off to a really slow shooting start last game, which Josh was lamenting on our post-lock show, because whoever it seems that Josh is really heavily overweight to, in the first quarter of those games, they just can't make a shot. But the good news for Josh, as soon as we stopped watching, as has also become custom, De'Aaron Fox started making everything. I remember we finished the show, what was it, on Thursday, when Josh was really heavy on De'Aaron Fox. Fox was like 0 for 9 from the field to start. And no lie, Josh logged off and De'Aaron Fox scored 10 points in about 90 seconds after that and ended up being like one of the top scorers on the slate. But at least
he also had like 4 stocks at that point in the game before he made a bucket or before his second bucket.
It was something like 5 steals and a block that game. I'm pulling up the box score really quick, but it was something absurd. It was 6 steals and a block he finished with. So anyway, as far as today goes, considering the price points on these guys, no potential value here. Down pace matchup against the Orlando Magic, who also have a decent defense. I don't think this is a team to really be rostering.
All right. Anything coming for you on the Orlando side? I did have a nice one. I rode the danger train. I recommended the under on a 3-pointer made. So no 3-pointer made there by Wendell Carter Jr. in his last game. Plus 260. It was popping up there on OddsShopper. I researched it a little bit, felt okay about it, and then he ended up not really playing a lot in the fourth quarter because of the way the game flow was. Very, very helpful, because heading into that, he had only not made a 3 in like 3 out of his last 10 games or something like that. So there was such plus money on it that I decided to go that route. aside from that, I don't have anything else to talk about with the Magic. Is there anything worth noting? Anything popping up in the Sims?
Not really. Gary Harris is questionable, but other than that, everybody that matters is going to be playing for the Orlando Magic. And as we've seen throughout the year, if everybody's active, the front court minutes are really hard to predict because got guys like Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac is starting to play some minutes as well at the center at times. We still got Mo Wagner who takes some minutes. So that kind of makes none of those guys all that appealing. And then as far as the backcourt goes, you got Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz. They're all fighting for minutes as well. So another team here, neither side of this game do I get very much of. There's nobody on the team projected for double-digit exposure, and the player I'm getting the most of is Cole Anthony in 7% of lineups, but he's projected for 9% ownership, so it's not even like he's some sort of massive contrarian play for me. So the first game on the slate, largely a pass.
All righty. Reminder, everybody, that we do put the vast majority of our content out on the Stochastic Podcast Network. As long as it's not live before lock or the deeper dive, it's going to end up on the podcast network. You guys can check that out. We also have channels for Odd Shopper. We have NBA-specific content. We have the full channel. And, of course, we have the MLB channel and NFL. NFL we can set aside for now, but the MLB is starting up here Thursday. Everybody will be taking the field. So that will be opening day. Check that out. We've got a lot of fun stuff. And for those of you looking for a little bit of an edge, for a limited time, if you go to the DFS building blocks article, you will see the lineup generator. There's a promo code that gets you the lineup generator 1 week for $1. You have to go check out that out in the article. It'll be up near the top. But for anybody willing to do a little bit of legwork, that is the lineup generator. 1 week for $1. Good times there. Game number 2 here, Greg. Everybody's hitting the like button as well because we got to get all the housekeeping out of the way because now we've got some fun. We've got the Charlotte Hornets, 8.5-point underdogs here in Atlanta taking on the Hawks. Surprisingly, I believe it's just a 214. Make sure I didn't type that wrong. Yep, 214 projected point total here. Charlotte still carrying the masquerade that LaMelo Ball is out. I doubt we'll see him for the rest of the season. Seth Curry is out, Martin is out, Mark Williams is out, and McGowan's is out. This is an island game for Charlotte. They played this Tuesday. They don't play again until Mondays when they're in Cleveland. So again, this is one of those extended weeks before the final push on the season that I was mentioning. Atlanta is, of course, without Trae Young. They are also without Jalen Johnson. And then Onyeka Okongwu did return after his injury layoff, though he may not play tonight as they don't want to overdo it for him. This is also an island game for Atlanta. They played on Thursday. They play again on Monday. DeJounte Murray and Bridges are the players that stand out in this one. What do you got for the Charlotte side, Greg?
Yeah, so Charlotte's going to be running a fairly tight rotation today because there are so many players that are out for them at this point. I mean, you just mentioned Bryce McGowan's added to the list of players who are out for the team. And while individually, is he somebody we really care about as a fantasy producer? No, not really, but he is somebody who takes minutes for the Charlotte Hornets. And then same goes for the other players who are right now, like Cody Martin, like Seth Curry. So this is a team that's going to be running a fairly tight rotation. And as a result, there are a handful of guys that are showing up in 20% of my lineups here. A couple of them we don't typically play all that often. Pokashevsky. Back in the day, remember, Pokashevsky was somebody who was a fairly common value option, somebody we got to a whole bunch of back when he was on the Oklahoma City Thunder and when they were tanking. That's a couple of years ago now, and then he broke his leg last year. He's resurfaced for the Charlotte Hornets. He's starting to get actual rotation minutes for them now, and he's always been a guy, while he wasn't great from a real-life perspective, always had fantasy upside because he can do a little bit of everything, rebounding, defensive stats, could score a little bit. So Pokashevsky, he's showing up in 18% of lineups for me. Davis Bertans, basically all the same reasons of getting to Pokashevsky. Bertans is landing in some lineups as well. So 18% Pokashevsky for me. I've got 21% Davis Bertans. And then Brandon Miller. I can't remember the last time I really had a slate that I played very much of Brandon Miller, but his salary has started to come down a little bit. And then also we know that he's somebody who's carried a fairly high usage for a lot of the season when LaMelo Ball has been out. But now that Brandon Miller's price has started to slide a little bit and we're not paying like the crazy high price tags we were before, he's back in play again. So Brandon Miller, one of the other guys from this team, they're getting 20% exposure of. And then a couple other guys sprinkled in, but the real guys that are most important to me, Bertans, Pokashevsky, and Brandon Miller.
How do you think any of them are tenuous? Is there going to be better value that knocks these guys off the pedestal, or are they kind of impervious at some point here?
Yeah, I mean, so guys like Bertans and Pokashevsky, what would most likely happen that would make them not show up in lineups anymore is just a bunch of players getting ruled out late, things along those
Okay.
lines. So if that does end up being the case, where players don't end, or sorry, if players from other teams end up becoming really strong value options, then guys like Pokashevsky, Bertans, less important.
All righty. How are you feeling about someone like Clint Capella going against this less than stellar Chicago or Charlotte front court?
So if we're looking at the other side of the game, the Atlanta Hawks, I'll swap over there. And on the Atlanta side of the game, I'm getting a ton of exposure here. Atlanta is a team that's landing in a bunch of my lineups, as you guys will see on screen. I've got currently 64% of Bruno Fernando. A lot of that's because he's the power forward and center eligibility. Yeko Okongwu not expected to play. He's doubtful, dealing with a toe injury. So that's what brings Bruno Fernando back to the mix. I have no clue why Bruno Fernando has power forward eligibility on DraftKings. He has only played center minutes this year, but because he has that power forward eligibility, being able to fit him into multiple lineup spots, it makes it pretty easy to get to some Bruno Fernando. You mentioned Clint Capella, somebody else. His minutes also are looking a little bit stronger in the absence of Onyeka Okongwu. He's waking his way into nearly 60% of my lineups. And then DeJounte Murray, who's just been a great fantasy producer pretty much ever since Trae Young went down. He's one of the top pay-up options on the slate. So those are the three guys that are real core plays, and also players that, as things stand right now, if you guys are playing cash games, I think you absolutely must play Bruno Fernando, Clint Capella, DeJounte Murray in cash. That is if the slate was to lock right now. Who knows what other news ends up popping up later. But those are three of the players I have the most exposure to at first look.
All right. I love DeJounte Murray. I think this is an amazing spot for his skill set. If we look at everything else together on the slate today, we'll have to see what happens with Boston. We've got Victor Wembanyama on the back-to-back. All of a sudden, then you got DeJounte Murray because Fox and Sabonis are going against Orlando. We already talked about that. Orlando, one of the better defenses this year. Suddenly, DeJounte Murray looking like a stud. University of Washington. Go Huskies. I got to shout them out now because I can't shout them out during the tournament because they've made it like 3 of the last 20 years or something. Pathetic for a Pac-12 team. That's probably why the conference is ending.
Yeah, and as far as the rest of the players on the Atlanta Hawks, there's other players that are making their way into lineups as well. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic as well, just not as high priorities as the other guys, but still I have 17% Hunter. I have 17% of Bogdanovic as well. It's a team. There's no Onyeka Okongwu likely. He's doubtful. We got Jalen Johnson out. We've got also other players who are just guys that are playing some minutes, like whoever the hell Muhammad Gui is. Right, he's somebody who he's also out for today. He's somebody who could potentially take minutes. AJ Griffin, he's out. Cody Buffkin's out. So another team that's shorthanded towards the tail end of the season. The biggest injuries here, though, are Okongwu being doubtful, Jalen Johnson being out, Trae Young to an extent, although it's just such old news at this point that we don't really think about Trae Young at this point.
All right. Do you think DeAndre Hunter stays in the starting lineup? He got a spot start in the last one.
So I am expecting the starting lineup to be for tonight. Murray, Bogdanovic, Krejci, Hunter, and Capella. Even though Krejci is relatively cheap and should be starting, he's not a very good fantasy producer, so he's only in 3% of my lineups right now.
You got me. You got the second. They answered the question before I asked it. Do friends let friends play Vit Krejci?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be necessary. He's somebody who, if this was a slate that was maybe like middle of the year where we didn't have a lot of injuries to talk to, we would go to him, but otherwise, no.
All right, then let's get on to the next one because it's going to be another fun one. We are heading into the 8 o'clock games now. You've got the Toronto Raptors in Washington taking on the Wizards. Raptors actually 5.5-point underdogs. The Wizards, last time we saw them, somehow they beat Sacramento. Of all things, almost held Sacramento below 100 points. That was a bit of a shocker there. You've got RJ Barrett for Toronto. He is out for personal reasons. You have Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, and Chris Boucher are all out with injuries. I don't think we're going to see any of them for the rest of the season. Emmanuel Quickley is doubtful. He has missed the last 2 games for personal reasons. I suspect he will be out tonight. And then you have Gary Trent Jr., who's dealing with a sore back. So we'll have to wait and see what his status is going to be. This is a back-to-back and a 3-4 for Toronto. They lost 123-103 at home last night to Oklahoma City. In that game, you saw Grady Dick play 33 minutes. Akbaji played 32. Freeman Liberty played 29. You had Brown get 28 and Olynyk 27. Those were your starters off the bench. You had Jonte Porter and Jordan Nwora both played 21 minutes. So we'll be looking at these guys for value. On the Washington side, injuries for them as well. Tyus Jones still out, as is Eugene Omarui. And then Landry Shamet, we'll just mention him just because. You've got Jordan Poole questionable because of hip injury. Marvin Bagley III should be back tonight. He missed the last 9 games with a back injury. That will make things interesting because Rashawn Holmes had something wild, like 16 rebounds in the last game. The Wizards played Thursday. They don't play again until Monday. So we have an island game for them. What are you looking at here? 231.5 projected total here. It's tops on the slates, Greg.
Yeah, so as of right now, my expectation is that Javon Freeman Liberty is going to stick in the starting lineup for the Toronto Raptors. Ended up being one of the better points per dollar plays projected heading into the slate yesterday. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible either. One thing that did hurt him a little bit is the starters came out with about 4 minutes left in the game because it was a blowout. So we lost out on likely a few fantasy points because of that. But this is a really good matchup for him. He's playing against the Washington Wizards. They're one of the worst defenses in the league. Freeman Liberty remains really cheap. We just have to be sure that he's going to stick in the starting lineup, which I don't think has to be the case. They could go to Ja Ramsey as the starter today. There's a number of different options they could go to. But as of right now, we are projecting Freeman Liberty to start. With that being the case, we have him in for 26.86 fantasy points. That makes him the best value play on the slate by a mile. By a mile. And I know that people are probably a little bit sour on him because the first time he was a chalk play a few weeks ago, he ended up coming off the bench instead of starting. It was hardly in the rotation. Then yesterday, once again, wasn't terrible, but wasn't terrific either. So people might not want to click on the Freeman Liberty name, but this is such a good matchup against the Washington Wizards. We just have to make sure that he's in the starting lineup later, and then he's somebody we're going to want to be getting to. Jonte Porter showing up in a lot of lineups, as is Jordan Nwora. As the day goes on, I do think the ownership on these guys, at least as far as their exposure in my lineups, is going to drop a little bit as more value comes out and players get rolled out throughout the day. But Jordan Nwora in half my lineup for now. Jonte Porter in half my lineups. Porter's look great, by the way, when he gets minutes. He could do a little bit of everything. We've seen very good passing ability out of him. He could rebound. He could score a little bit. He could shoot threes. He provides defensive stats. He's the brother of Michael Porter Jr., by the way. Not that that matters for anything, just information for the people. But Nwora, Porter, Javon Freeman, Liberty, they're looking like three of the better value options on the slate. I don't have a ton of interest in paying up for anybody from Toronto. Also, it's not like there are that many guys to really pay up for, but like the slightly more expensive guys on the cheaper end, like Bruce Brown, Grady Dick, Agbaji, they've become more expensive to the point where they're not the same sort of plays they were on previous slates when they were, $1,000, $1,500 less expensive.
That's funny that you mentioned that because Kelly Olynyk, yes, Gonzaga's own Kelly Olynyk is the most expensive player on the Raptors. He has 6,800 on DK. That is pretty crazy. You mentioned Freeman Liberty. Kind of sounds a little bit like a discount insurance, right? Not too great, but not too bad either. Liberty. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, he was. And also, most of the top lineups did have him in them yesterday. So it's not like he was, once again, was not totally terrible, but he didn't break the slate either. It was just like, hey, if you get, 19 fantasy points out of somebody who's $3,500 on DraftKings, it's like, whatever. Didn't help, didn't hurt.
All right. Talking about the Wizards here, because Toronto, one of the worst defenses in the league. Obviously, no Pirtle. They got traded off OG Anunoby and also Pascal Siakam. Surprisingly, Fred VanVleet. Turns out he actually was pretty key as part of their team defense there up at the top. But we got a lot of interest here in Washington. You've got Denny Abdia on a rising price tag here. He is still pretty intriguing, especially where you can get him as a small forward. Kyle Kuzma is now a power forward in center because the Wizards previously didn't really have much in the way of centers after trading away Daniel Gafford, and then you also had Marvin Bagley, who was injured. Let's set the centers aside for just a second here. How are you feeling about the Abdias, Kuzmas, and let's throw in Corey Kispert for this one? You can add in Jordan Poole as well, aka the guys that are going to put up some fantasy points and score.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that we know for sure that Jordan Poole is going to put up fantasy points and score, because that's something that he does, I don't know, once every couple of weeks or something along those lines. He's also a little bit more expensive right now. But what's most important, Jordan Poole is questionable. So if he is out, we're going to have some weird potential. There's so many ways that the Wizards could go with their starting unit if Jordan Poole doesn't end up playing, because we also have Landry Shamet out, Tyus Jones is out, Amarui is out.
Oh, I
So even
forgot
if
Bilal Coulibaly is out. Yeesh.
Yeah, so if Poole doesn't play, my best guess is that Jared Butler ends up starting. But once again, just a best guess. It's a team that also, kind of like we were talking about earlier, with teams like, the Detroit Pistons holding out Dern yesterday, or a team like the Charlotte Hornets, right? These teams just don't have a whole lot to play for at this point in the season, which does make, like, the Wizards might just look at the roster and be like, hey, we want to give Johnny Davis minutes because we spent a lot of draft capital on him, and they might just say, let's start him and play him a bunch again. But I think Jared Butler would be the most sensible player for them to start. But once again, just the best guess. As things are looking right now, if Jordan Poole is in, the one guy I do like getting to is Kyle Kuzma. And as poorly as the Wizards have played this year, and I mean, if you compare their roster to the Pistons, you would think the Wizards on paper should be a little bit better, but they're not. This has been the worst team in the NBA this year. But Kyle Kuzma has played fairly well this year, and he's somebody who's also been pretty relatively consistent as well. The only thing you really get concerned about with Kuzma is, will the games be a blowout, and will that prevent him from playing a decent amount of minutes? And that's less of a concern in this matchup against the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are so bad with the amount of players that are out right now. I can't remember the last time this happened. The Wizards are favored by 6 points against Toronto. The Wizards are favored by 6 points over nobody ever. No. So I think we should have a little bit more confidence this game remains competitive. As long as that is the case, Kyle Kuzma looks like a pretty good payoff option.
Yeah, and then the other thing to remember, it was about, I think this was the 4th year at least, if not the 5th year. They changed the worst record to the bottom 3 records, get an equal number of lottery balls. Wizards are tied with Detroit. Each team is at 12 and 58. The San Antonio Spurs are 3 games ahead of them, and then after that, no one's going to be close. Charlotte is the next closest team, but they are no way they can tank 5.5 games. And the Wizards aren't going to win 6 games the rest of the season, and that is what it would take for them to surpass Charlotte if Charlotte lost everything. So I think it's a home game. It's a winnable game. I think we see the Kuzmas of the world, the Kisperts, the Obvious playing a little more minutes. Do you have a lean on center here, or is this a spot to kind of stay away? It's probably going to be relatively close to a 24 or a 26, 22 minute split there between Gafford and between Bagley, who is returning after a 9-game layoff, and Holmes. Any interest in them? If Gafford does, pardon me, I keep saying Gafford. If Bagley doesn't start, do you just kind of write him off and say they're going to ease him back into it?
Well, I assume they're going to ease him back into it even if he does start. I don't think they're going to play him more than, say, like 24 to 26 minutes or anything like that. Marvin Bagley was dealing with a back injury and he hasn't played since
9 games.
Yeah, March 4th. So nearly a month off for Marvin Bagley. With that being the case, I find it very unlikely that he'd play a significant amount of minutes. So it's not only going to make him not in play, but just him playing any minutes is going to remove the potential of playing guys like Champagnie or Patrick Baldwin that have popped up on some recent slates.
All righty. Anything else you'd like to mention from this matchup?
Nope, not from this game.
All righty. That marks the halfway point of the show for us here. We've got 3 games to go. If you haven't hit that like button, please do so. Always helpful when you guys do that. We, of course, have Sleeper as the presenting sponsor, $500 deposit match there. I'm also going to give a shout out here to PrizePicks. They are another pick'em site that is out there. I'm going to put in the landing page for their information and then the promo code link. And the key things there, $100 deposit match on your first deposit. You also get 1 free month of Odd Shopper if you sign up through our link, and that is helpful because Odd Shopper has all of the pickup sites on. They're the main ones. It's got Sleeper, it's got PrizePicks, etc. So you guys definitely want to take advantage of that. If you have not joined, the fun things over there on PrizePicks are Taco Tuesday. They do 3 or 4 different players with between a 15 and 20% reduced number. They do like a Twitter poll to determine one. They do a Slack poll to determine another, and then they make sure that they have 4 out there per day, per Tuesday. That is Taco Tuesday, kind of a 2 for deal there. And they're also doing a lot of fun in-game contests and other surprises as well. They also have Goblins and Demons. Goblins make it a little easier for you to clear whatever the wager is, but you get a lower dynamic payout. Demons are, you can only take the overs, but they offer a higher payout. So you'll want to check them out. All right, game number 4 here, Greg. This one also not the worst. We just don't know who's going to be playing. Boston Celtics favored by 6.5 in Chicago. On the doubtful side here for Boston, we have Jaylen Brown and Porzingis. Questionable are White and Holiday. Probable are Tatum and Horford. This is a back-to-back and a 3 and 4, but they've been giving their key players games off here. So it's kind of interesting for Boston. They play again on Monday. They have won their last 8 games. They are 19 and 2 in their last 21 games. On the Chicago side, we have Alex Caruso, probable. He is dealing with a sore ankle. You have Kobe White. He is back with after missing a few games with the hip injury. He landed very hard on his hip. He came off the bench the last game. I want to say he played about 28 or 29 minutes. He will have to see what he's going, if he's going to rejoin the starting lineup. If he does, it's probably closer to 32 minutes tonight. Or with a chance to get a little bit more. Island game here for Chicago. Last played Thursday. Play again on Monday. Any read on who you think is going to be the people we want to look to for the Celtics after they had yet another phenomenal game last night?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. We need more information here. They haven't submitted their injury report yet today, so we could make some speculations on who they're going to rest, who they're going to play. Tatum seems like somebody who would be the most likely target for us to want to be getting to, because if you look at the way that they have run some of these rests, who's been in, who's been out, considering that Tatum didn't play yesterday, I expect he is going to play today and other guys are going to be rested, but just need more information here because we don't have that injury report. It does stand to reason that Porzingis and Jaylen Brown are both going to rest just kind of based on what the rest patterns are, but it's just speculative right now. Assuming that Tatum is good to go here, he's likely going to be playing with increased usage with other players out, but we just need more information. And it's hard to know right now because Celtics are resting a lot of guys right now and they haven't submitted an injury report yet for today.
I got to go let the irrigation folks in. Do you want to vamp on the other side of this game for Chicago?
Yeah, absolutely no problem. So
thank you very much.
Over there doing irrigation. Part of the people don't know this. The most important part of moving is irrigating, apparently. But anyway, EMAC has to step out, and let's just carry on the Chicago side of the game. And also, so we've got top picks in the chat said spread is okay 6. Yeah, a lot of it is just so speculative on that Boston game because we have no clue who's going to be in or out for them. And then Stephen Leibowitz said he hasn't looked at Pritchard's price. He's been playing well. And yeah, Pritchard has been playing really well. But if Drew Holiday is playing, if Derek White is playing, there just aren't a lot of minutes available for Pritchard. He's played well because guys have been out and it's gotten him extra minutes. Other side of the game, though, we've got the Chicago Bulls to talk about. And on the Chicago side of the game, nothing looks appealing here because they're going up against the Boston Celtics, one of the elite defenses in the NBA. And we don't have anybody on the injury report anymore for Boston. Kobe White, he's back in the mix for them. He sat out a couple of games with a hip injury. The only thing that is maybe a little bit of a question when it comes to the Bulls is how many minutes does Kobe White play and does he start? So after missing 3 games because of the hip injury, he came back last game, came off the bench, but he played less than 30 minutes. My best guess is that we are going to see Kobe White get back into the starting lineup, play his full allotment of minutes. Kobe White, as a starter this year, is averaging 37 minutes per game. So I think we get the full workload back for Kobe White. And assuming that is the case, nothing looks good here because players are a little bit priced up from the time that Kobe White was away. Dosunmu's more expensive. Caruso is more expensive. We've also got guys like DeMar DeRozan, he's gotten to be a little bit more expensive. The one thing that I do think we should be keeping an eye out for here, though, is maybe DeMar DeRozan gets suspended. Maybe. I don't know what you guys think about that weird play the other day where DeMar DeRozan kind of ran over Jalen Green. Then it appeared that he elbowed Dillon Brooks. But, I mean, come on, elbowing Dillon Brooks, that shouldn't matter all that much relative to other players. Like, if there's one player you should be allowed to elbow, and like two players, Draymond Green you should be allowed to elbow, and Dillon Brooks you should be allowed to elbow. So we'll see. I think it's potential that the NBA comes out and ends up suspending DeMar DeRozan for a game or two. If that does end up being the case, that would make things a little bit more interesting for Chicago. But at least as things stand right now, I think this is the least interesting team on the entire slate. Comment God wants to know, is irrigation guy code for a prostate exam? Sort of. But also, Emac doesn't even get his prostate exams done by a doctor. He just has like a guy knocks on his door. I think it's his neighbor. Just comes over, knocks on the door, and does a prostate exam. And then he just tells Emac, like, hey, yeah, good stuff today. But he doesn't go to a medical professional. He like orders it off eBay or something. But anyway, more importantly, Chicago Bulls, nothing that's standing out to me from this side of the game. So it's a team that I'm going to be pretty much fading. Out of 150 lines, one Caruso share, one Vooch share, one Kobe White share. And then these guys are going to look even less appealing if more players get ruled out over the course of the day. So let's move on to the next game. The Phoenix Suns are on the road against the San Antonio Spurs. And as far as Phoenix goes, this is another team that I'm hardly getting any exposure to. And that's more or less, welcome back, Emac. That was a quick irrigation you got done there.
Well, I also had time to talk to my neighbor, if you know what I mean, too. So,
yeah, people are bringing up that he's walking a little bit funny now, and
it happens. It happens.
Irrigated.
Yeah, they can do some amazing stuff with sprinklers these days. So.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Phoenix.
Yeah. So just I took the Bulls were really quick because there's nothing I'm getting to at all from there. But yeah, moved on to Phoenix now, if you want to kick it off.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So the only real concern, not even really a concern, Josh Okogie is questionable. He's dealing with a sore abdomen. This is the 3-4 for the Suns, though they did not play last night. They play again on Monday. It's a reprisal of this matchup. So we will see these teams square off again in San Antonio. The Spurs are on a back-to-back. So last night we saw Devin Vassell played 33 minutes. Victor Wembanyama played 33. Trey Jones played 33. Sohan played 31. And Keldon Johnson played 29 off the bench. They lost, surprisingly. I thought they were going to take care of business there against Memphis. Not very exciting from a fantasy perspective. Both teams failed to score 100 points. Almost looked like it was going to go to overtime there. Sadly, it did not for those of us that were rostering Wemby. This is one where I think you look to Devin Booker as a potential pivot away from DeJounte Murray. You can absolutely play both of them in the same lineups, of course, but I think that's where Booker's biggest utility is looking for a little pivot away from DeJounte Murray. What do you got from the Suns here?
Not all that much. And this is pretty much the status quo for me for Phoenix when everybody's in. The only times that I've really gotten to Phoenix with regularity was earlier in the year when one of their big three was almost always out and made the other two guys stand out. Or if you get somebody, like when Nurkic has been out on occasion, or, somebody else, like we had slates where Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen were both out. When everybody's active and healthy for this team, nothing really looks all that appealing. And because you get these individual games where a guy ends up being out here and there, then you get all the other players end up being priced out. So Phoenix Suns, another team that doesn't look all that appealing to get to. I've really rarely played Kevin Durant or Devin Booker this season.
It's been more of a late slate thing for me, or when each of them had been out, as well as when Bradley Beal was out. But it's been a little while since they've really been featured plays in all of this. How do you feel about the Spurs? We've seen Wemby, I don't want to say underperform is the word, because he has not been as absolutely ungodly as he was, the preceding 5 games, this last 5-game stretch, looking more like a mere mortal, considering
I don't know if I'd go that far.
19 or 20, and he's only, flirting with 7-7. What did he have? Like a 30 27-7 game. He's just creating all sorts of new little clubs for himself to join here. Greg, do you want to allocate some resources to him tonight?
Yeah, Field isn't really playing him. He's only projected for 10% ownership. He's one of the easiest guys to get overweight to the field to. And then as more value pops up, it's going to be even easier to get to Wemby. I don't totally agree with you. He's cooling off considering, his last few games here. He's averaging north of 60 fantasy points. He put up 68 last night. He had 76 a couple of games ago. He's just putting up all kinds of
80s. He needs to show Giannis how it's done, Greg. Otherwise, he's failing.
I can't remember a time Giannis was putting up these kinds of stat lines. I mean, they're different players. But by the way, a cool thing about Wemby is my brother was telling me there's Topps baseball cards. For whatever reason, they included Wemby in the set. And he signed, his signature is he drew a picture of a UFO with a waving alien next to it. That was how he did his signature on the cards. That's really cool. My brother said they're selling for like $100,000, the limited amounts of those cards. But anyway, I mean, Wembanyama, if the field is really not going to play him, I want to be aggressively overweight to him. It's a tail end of a back-to-back, but that hasn't really been as much of an issue for him as of late. The last time we saw him in a back-to-back, he played 31 and a half minutes on the front end. He played 31 minutes on the back end. He played 33 and a half minutes last night, finished with 31 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals. He's very clearly coming into his own. He also had a savage quote about Rudy Gobert the other day where he was asked about his status for Defensive Player of the Year, where a reporter had asked him something along the lines of, do you think you should be Defensive Player of the Year? And he said that Rudy Gobert's had a great season, and he thinks that Rudy Gobert is deserving of a winner. And then he added, especially because after this year, it's not his turn anymore. He said that the Defensive Player of the Year is going to be basically a bookmark for him going forward. And it is hard to disagree with that. I mean, Wemby might be something like, I don't know, minus 200 to win Defensive Player of the Year at Open next year because his defensive stats just ridiculous. All his advanced defensive stats also absurd. Nothing else looks good on the Spurs, but Wemby relative to ownership, my favorite contrarian play on the slate.
Yeah, it's phenomenal just watching how he moves, because if you think back to all of the different players that the super tall guys as they've evolved over the last 30 years or so, more and more just more mobile and athletic compared to the Mark Eatons, the George Murasons, Mutombo. Mutombo was pretty good. Manute Bol. Who was the white guy, the really tall, goofy looking guy? Can't think of his name. But those guys have all. I mean, Wemby looks not nimble, but he looks not gangly and gawky out there, which is impressive.
He handles the ball like point guard. He has really good vision. And for people asking in the chat, there is no quadruple double bonus over on DraftKings. But I mean, if somebody has a quadruple double, they've already broken the slate. So there's no scenario where somebody has a quadruple double and they aren't the leading scorer on the slate. So it probably doesn't matter at that point. But yeah, maybe let's see. So what is it? It's 1.5 points for a double double, 3 points for a triple double. So maybe you do 4.5 or 5 points for a quadruple double if they added it.
Yeah, or just give them 2 double doubles. That would work. That would work.
Yeah,
Sean Bradley is the player, and he was an interesting guy because I remember he was one of the more mobile, really tall guys for his day, and I remember seeing pictures of him or a video on ESPN of him playing high school baseball as a batter, which was just his strike zone was immense. And he was not that good, but just the fact that he was even trying to play baseball, but he was quick enough. But yeah, Wemby is just, I don't know. There hasn't really been anyone quite like him. So there we are. I see David Robinson. Yeah, Robinson was the Admiral. I love David Robinson. All righty. Back to present day. Greg, shall we finish off? This is our last one, correct? The Utah-Houston game. All righty. Well, this one is another fantasy-friendly game. Jordan Clarkson remains out. He will be missing his 6th game with a groin issue. Lauri Markkanen has been ruled out for rest, or as I'm calling it now, asset management. You have John Collins is questionable. That is PTDD, post-traumatic dunk disorder. So I don't know when he's going to be coming back anytime soon, Greg. And then you've got Omar Yurtseven, who is questionable with the sore ankle. Island game for this team last played Thursday, play again on Monday. Houston, their main guys that are continue to be out for the remainder of the season are Şengün, Tari Eason, and Cam Whitmore. Also Island game for them Thursday, Monday. Do you think Collins plays tonight?
Man, it's hard to say because the injury is so weird, right? Because he got hurt being dunked on by Anthony Davis, and then he played the next game. But then after playing, he sat out the game after that. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So I have no clue.
No, post-traumatic dunk disorder.
He does. What happened is he saw Chet dunk on, I forget who Chet dunked on the Jazz. He did the goofiest white guy raise the roof celebration ever. And then John Collins like, oh no, that could happen to me again. Couldn't play the next day. So I don't know. If he does sit, Walker Kessler likely to draw another start and becomes a really strong option. One of the top center plays on the slate, one of the top points per dollar plays on the slate if Walker Kessler starts. I assume John Collins is back in, but yeah, it's just such a weird scenario that he ended up sitting out the game after being able to play. And I mean, it's also the whole scenario is weird because they said the team tweeted he had a concussion. They delete the tweet. Then they say he has a contusion, a head contusion. Then they said it's not a head contusion. It's a face injury. And none of it has really made a whole lot of sense logically. So I don't know if he's going to play or not. If he's in, there's nothing all that appealing from the front court of the Utah Jazz. But if he ends up sitting, like I said, Walker Kessler comes into play. The guy that right now is the most appealing to me is Colin Sexton. And not exactly sure what they're going to do with Sexton. My assumption, though, is that he's going to remain coming off the bench because that is what Will Hardy told us. He said as long as Jordan Clarkson is out, Colin Sexton is going to come off the bench. But if we look at what that's meant for his minutes in the recent games, it hasn't really been terrible because coming off the bench, we've gotten last game 34 minutes out of Sexton, 30 minutes the game before, 37 minutes off the bench the game prior to that. So they're still finding 34 to 36 minutes for Colin Sexton in competitive games, and he has more usage coming off the bench. So his usage rate this year as a bench player in recent games is close to 30%. So coming off the bench has low-key kind of been beneficial to Colin Sexton. He's projected for a ton of ownership, but given his recent ownership, given his recent usage, as well as what his playing time has been, it totally makes sense to me. So Colin Sexton is in 68% of my lineups as of now, while nothing else from Utah standing out.
All right, then let's turn it over to Houston as we wind down our March Madness, Dave, here for the NBA. Reminder, we do have the NBA live before long. That is going to be 6 o'clock, so we will have much more updated news. And, of course, the games are all tipping off within a 1 hour window, 1 at 7, 1 at 7:30, and 4 at 8. They're skipping that 10 o'clock game, though DraftKings did put it on a late slate starting at 8 o'clock with the other 4 8 o'clock games. This brings us over here to Houston. We kind of have a more consolidated core here. You've got Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Amen Thompson are kind of their key players. You've got Dylan Brooks. I don't know what to do with him. And then was Block Landale, was that a nickname DFS gave him, or was that a nickname he already had? But he had 42 fantasy points in or 43 in his last game there. Double-double, 17 points, 12 boards, 5 assists. What do you want to do with the Houston side?
Yeah, so as far as Houston goes, there are going to be people who ask us about Jock Landale, and the reason he had such a big fantasy game last time out was Jabari Smith Jr. picked up 3 personal fouls in like 6 minutes. And that was something that really contributed to Jock Landale just having to play bigger minutes. Now, Landale's played so well that he's absolutely locked up the backup center spot for himself, but there's just no chance that we're going to see Jabari, unless something totally outlandish happens, like crazy foul trouble again or injury. Jabari Smith only played 22 minutes last game and had 5 personal fouls in those minutes. So it was kind of a perfect storm for Jock Landale to get bigger minutes and to play really well in those minutes. I don't expect that to be the case today. His price has gone up a little bit, so not getting to Jock Landale right now. If Jabari Smith gets ruled out unexpectedly, he's not on the injury report, then sure, Landale comes into play. But Landale's success was very much tied to the limited playing time for Jabari Smith Jr. As far as the players I do want to get to from Houston, Amen Thompson continues to look really good for a couple of reasons. First off, he's starting and playing bigger minutes, but also such good position eligibility on DraftKings. When you could play him at both point guard and small forward, just really flexible, easy to get him into lineups. And then Fred VanVleet also standing out a good amount. He's somebody I'm overweight to. He's picking up ownership, but it's only modest at 25%, and he's in north of a third of my lineup. So Fred VanVleet, I like being overweight to. Amen Thompson also looks like a really strong play due to his position flexibility. And nothing else to really want to be getting to from Houston right now. Jalen Green has absolutely been fantastic as of late. It seems like he's starting to break out and come into his own, but that's also come with a big increase in his price tag, and that does make him harder to get to. So I know people are going to want to play Green because of his recent success, but the price tag is prohibitive for me. So he's only in 7% of my lineups. The guys I want from Houston, Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson.
Fred Van Elite. He's had a nice run, shall we say. Hard to trust because his fantasy production is typically unlocked by his scoring, but he is very willing to defer and be the main point guard because, well, he is the main point guard, but he's willing to take a back seat here to Smith and to Green and to a lesser extent Thompson. You can see that in his last 2 games, he scored 9 and 7 points, and only took 11 shots in each game, but he still had 12 assists, 16 assists the game prior to that, or 11 assists, 16 assists in the game prior to that. So he's doing a really good job of kind of helping shepherd this young squad here into their next evolution. They are probably not going to make it into the play-in tournament, but they are still just 2 games behind the Golden State Warriors, so they're not out of it just yet. And they have Houston has won their last 7, which was a bit of a surprise. They're making a nice little move here. Any other things you want to mention here, Greg? Perhaps anything that popped up from the Sims here. We can mention a little odd shopper as well. What do you got for us?
Yeah, no, nothing else. Just pulled overall exposures on first run. Just check out the live before lock that Emacker and I are going to be doing later, because some of the core stuff is going to stay the same, but there's definitely going to be some stuff that changes over the course of the day. Boston Celtics injury report, we have no clue what could potentially be on that. So that's going to be big for later. And then, end of the season, you never know who else will be ruled out. So check out live before lock tonight with myself and Emac.
All righty. But with that, we are going to get on out of here. You can follow Greg on Twitter at Ehrenberg_DFS. I am at EmacDFS. And of course, it is stochastic_COM. With that, gamers, don't forget to go through the link to get that $500 deposit match on Sleeper. And good luck.